Afternoon.
Right, good afternoon, everybody. It's 4 o'clock. It's Thursday, the 18th of March. Very rare to have a council meeting in the afternoon, but we felt it was important to actually try and fit this into the schedule where we possibly could. I'd like to welcome everybody to this afternoon's meeting, which of course is being held as a virtual meeting. I'm Jonathan Kay, Chairman of East Herts Council, and I welcome you whether you are part of the Zoom this afternoon, or indeed whether you're watching on the East Herts District YouTube channel. The local authorities and police and crime panels coronavirus flexibility of local authority and police and crime panel meetings England and Wales regulations 2020 came into force on Saturday the 4th of April 2020 to enable councils to hold remote committee meetings during the COVID-19 pandemic period. This was to ensure local authorities could conduct business during this current public health emergency. This extraordinary council meeting is being held remotely under these regulations via Zoom and is being recorded and live streamed on the East Herts District YouTube channel. Now, councillors, you'll know that there's been some Zoom updates. Most of you have probably got the update, but when it comes to voting, I'll call out for, and then we'll take account, and then against, then we'll add those up, and then abstentions. And what you will need to do is to raise your hand, not your physical hand, but the yellow hand at the bottom. So you go to the bottom of the screen, click on reactions, and then click raise hand. Those of you with the older system will go down to participants, and then you will click on the blue hand, which will then be raised for the purposes of voting. Can I just check if there are any councillors who have joined us not by Zoom but actually by telephone? If you can just call out if you're joining us purely on the phone. No? Okay, thank you very much. Likewise, in terms of speaking, of course, it's a question of raising either the yellow or the blue hand if you wish to speak. If you're not speaking, councillors, can you please ensure that your microphones are muted? As regards our guests, a warm welcome to you this afternoon too. And if you are not yet asking your question, could you please mute your microphone if it's not muted, but turn your camera off as well, please, and then put it on nearer the time when you're asking the question. When you have had your answer answered by the executive, if you then could press the leave button and then join us on the East Herts YouTube channel and watch the rest of the meeting if you wish to do so by doing that. Right. Now, at the meeting of the council held on the 2nd of March 2021, during the recorded vote on the East Herts budget, a remark was made by a councillor that was inadvertently broadcast to the wider meeting. The comment of "you silly girl" made by Councillor Michael McMullen immediately following Councillor Mary Brady's abstention, whilst not intended to be heard, was nevertheless inappropriate. Councillor McMullen accepts that he shouldn't have made the comment, irrespective of the circumstances or intention, and wishes to offer an unreserved apology to Councillor Mary Brady and to any others who were offended by the remark. Some equalities training is also being arranged for the end of the month, which Councillor McMullen will attend, and any other members wishing to do so can also attend. Now, East Herts Council is supporting a national day to remember those who have died during the pandemic and to show support for everyone who's been bereaved. On Tuesday, spearheaded by the end-of-life charity Marie Curie, the National Day of Reflection is set to mark the anniversary of the UK going into the first national lockdown. The National Day of Reflection will give the nation and communities a moment to remember, grieve, and celebrate everyone who's died during this time and show support for our families, friends, and colleagues who are grieving. A minute of silence will be held at 12 noon, and at 8 p.m, people are invited to stand outside with a light, it could be a candle, a torch, or even their phone, to remember someone who's died and show support to people going through a bereavement. So that's 12 noon, a minute silence, and at 8 p.m, a candle or indeed a torch.
Chairman, a point of order. I support this day of remembrance, but a point of order with regard to Councillor McMillan's apology. Would it not be correct
No, I think
for him to make the apology himself in public?
No, I think that the arrangement has been made between the two councillors involved and the head of Legal and Democratic Services. So I think that, you know, that I don't want to add to it and I don't want to take away from it. So I think it's appropriate that, you know, that they've had the conversation and that should be left where it is.
I do regret that, because his comment was made in public, and I feel that if he's willing, he should
Well, I
have
hope that the apology. The apology has been made in public, Councillor Goldstein.
But I did not hear him say it. I just heard you say it on his
Well, because look, I'm sure you trust the words of the head of Legal and Democratic Services. We're going now to item 2, and that's apologies for absence. Katie, we have apologies for absence this afternoon. Sorry. Yes, I couldn't hear you at first.
We have apologies from Councillor Bolton, Councillor Drake, Councillor Frecknell, Councillor Hollybon, Councillor Ranger, Councillor Rowley, and Councillor Wiley.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. We now go to the minutes, item number 3, which is on page 9 to 25.
Do you want to do a roll call?
Oh, a roll call. Yes, we normally have a roll call. That's quite right. Okay, Katie will call out your names if you can just say if you're present, and so we know who's here. Thanks very much, Katie.
Councillor Alder.
Present.
Councillor Andrews. Councillor Beckett. Councillor Beckett. I can see you, but I can't hear you. Councillor Bell.
Present.
Councillor Boylan.
Present.
Councillor Brady.
Present.
Councillor Eric Buckmaster.
Present, but oh, sorry. I thought you'd missed Ruth. I beg your pardon.
Councillor Ruth Buckmaster.
Present.
Councillor Bull.
Present.
Councillor Burnett.
Present.
Councillor Crofton.
Present.
Councillor Crystal.
Present.
Councillor Curtis.
Present.
Councillor Cutting.
Present.
Councillor Deering.
Present.
Councillor Devonshire.
Present.
Councillor Dumont,
Present.
Councillor Fernando,
Present.
Councillor Goldspink,
Present.
Councillor Goodeve,
Present.
Councillor Hall,
Present.
Councillor Hazy, Councillor Hazy,
Present.
Councillor Huggins,
Present.
Councillor Jones, Councillor Jones, no. Councillor Kay,
Present.
Councillor Kemp,
Present.
Councillor McAndrew,
Present.
Councillor McMullen,
Present.
Councillor Newton,
Present.
Councillor Page,
Present.
Councillor Pope,
Present.
Councillor Redfern, Councillor Redfern, Councillor Reid,
Present.
Councillor Ruffles,
Present.
Councillor Rutland Barsby,
Present.
Councillor Snowden,
Here.
Councillor Stevenson, Councillor Stevenson, Councillor Stowe,
Present.
Councillor Simons,
Present.
Councillor Ward Booth,
Present.
Councillor Williamson,
Present.
Councillor Wilson.
Present.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. And we now go on to the minutes on item number 3. This is on page 9 of the supplementary agenda number 1. Any comments or amendments to the minutes at all from anybody? No? Okay, in that case, can I go to Councillor Angela Alder?
I beg to move adoption of the minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of March 2021.
Thank you, Councillor Alder. Councillor Stephen Reid?
Yes, I would like to second that. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Reid. And we have to vote on it. So if you can go to your raised hand or your blue hand, if you're in favour of these minutes from the meeting of the 2nd of March.
Loads of hands there, Chairman. It's clearly carried.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Do you want to clear the yellow?
Yeah, just doing it now.
Sure, thank you. I will give you the opportunity. Anybody wants to vote against? No, or abstain? No, okay, thank you very much. Indeed, it is carried. And item 4 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest this afternoon? No, okay, thank you very much indeed. Item 5 is suspension of council procedure rules. Now, as this is an extraordinary meeting, the Constitution sets out what business the meeting can deal with under Part 4A, Council Procedure Rules, paragraph 4.2. Due to the large public interest in this item, and in the interests of transparency, it's been agreed by all the group leaders that this council procedure rule should be suspended and questions be allowed. Therefore, I believe Councillor George Cutting is proposing this.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to propose that the Council Procedure Rule 4.2 is suspended for this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cutting. Councillor Bob Deering?
Yes, I'm very happy to second this proposal.
Thank you very much indeed. Then can you go to your screens and raise your hand if you're in favour of this?
Definitely carried, Chairman. Loads of hands.
Yeah, okay.
Just clear that down a second.
Thank you.
Okay, done.
Thank you very much indeed. So now we go on to our public questions, which is on supplementary agenda number 1, pages 55 to 60. And because there are so many, I think there are 17 in total, but we ask you to put your question, and then what will happen later is that various members of the executive will address all the points that were raised during the 17 questions. So we'll start with the first question, and that comes from Simon Baker. Mr. Baker, are you here? Unmute yourself if you are.
Just checking down the participant list. I don't think we've got him in here.
No. Okay. Well, if he comes in, Peter, let me know. And in the meantime, we'll go to Jill Goldsmith. Jill Goldsmith.
Hello. Following on from Simon's question, which is about whether the changes should lead you to change your mind, the response from the community should lead you to change your mind. I'm interested in the transparency of the business case and the lack of engagement there's been in this whole process. Hence, my question is about the risks and the lack of transparency, which means that none of us in the community can have any understanding of what risks there are associated with this project. So my question is, the report to Council on business case for the ORL stipulates the deliverables the Council is committing to in the regeneration project, but it provides no detail on the contracts the Council has already entered into with City Heart, Glen Howells, Theatre Plan and Barker Langham, or on the future contracting to inform the public on how it will achieve the deliverables. The Council's contracts register discloses none of the existing ORL related contracts, in contravention of the Local Government Transparency Code, which requires local authorities to publish details of any contract, commissioned activity, purchase order, framework agreement, and any other legally enforceable agreement with a value that exceeds £5,000. At paragraph 20 of the code, it specifically states that local authorities should expect to publish details of contracts newly entered into. Commercial confidentiality should not, in itself, be a reason for local authorities to not follow the provisions of this code. Paragraph 8 in the report to Council mentions the risk of delay from the SPD process, but the effect of such impact is not spelled out. It says nothing about any other contractual or financial risks, such as the risk of developer non-delivery after it has bought the land from the Council from operating the site after its development. It does not set out any safeguards the Council may have. In the context of that complete lack of transparency and failure to apply the code, can you tell us what the impacts and specific financial risks there would be for the Council in this project? For example, if it gets delayed or set back, and what mitigations the Council has put in place to ensure that us taxpayers don't pay the price of this poorly managed contract.
Thank you, Ms. Goldsmith. And if I can now ask Stuart Purton, if Stuart Purton is here for his question.
Good afternoon, everyone. As there's been widely publicised criticism of the rushed rework of the scheme, what efforts have or can be made to include members of the local creative community in this process? The voices of commercial interests will be amplified by their money. How will you ensure those without financial clout are given equal credence?
Thank you very much indeed. Simon Gilliver. Mr. Gilliver.
Good afternoon. Almost uniquely for a town of its size, Bishop Stortford has no venues of any description large enough to hold large-scale concerts or events. The previous plans for ORL addressed this need, whereas the new proposal merely duplicates facilities that already exist in the town. In responding to the reduced available funds, why has the Council not sought to find a solution that still delivers on the needs of the town, but on a reduced budget?
Thank you, Mr. Gilliver, for your question. Paddy Lennox is next. Mr. Lennox.
Hello, good afternoon, councillors. Quick question. In a report on the future of cinema, which we understand underpins the Council's business case for the proposed 5-screen cinema, Tamara Jarvis concluded that the key success of smaller locally run venues lies in a flexible offering to, quote, local interest and population groups, responding to these groups' demands by combining cinema spaces with other spaces to engage, quote, live performances. That sounds great, But given that none of the local performing arts groups, not the local theatre, not the Symphonia, not the comedy club, and not the local live music bands say the proposed new design Old River Lane will be of use to them, who exactly are these, quote, local interest and population groups? Please name them for us.
Thank you, Mr. Lennox. Gailey Pollock. Gailey Pollock, is she here?
Yes, sorry, I was just unmuting.
No, that's fine.
Good afternoon, councillors. If the footprint of the ORL Art Centre is the same as the original plan, why can't we build the cinema spaces but leave the space for the larger auditorium, which would benefit the town's arts organisations that can't use the proposed small flexible performance spaces, to be built at a later date at a time when it might be easier to apply for funding?
Right, thank you very much indeed. Paul Dean, good afternoon, Mr. Dean.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Section 8 of the business plan report for the ORL development says the master planning and SPD process is a key risk, where it is expected that there will be some turbulence around public opinion. Much of this arises from the council's perceived failure to separate its role as ORL's landowner and developer from its role as the local planning authority and its consultations with the public. The same paragraph illustrates the problem by suggesting the risk to the SPD process will be mitigated through close working and good communication between City Heart and EHDC's project team and planning officers. District Plan Policy BISH 81, though, makes it clear that an SPD will be prepared by EHDC's planning officers and used to inform the master planning, not that the SPD will be informed by the developer's master plan and EHDC's business case. In view of this, will the council confirm that in mitigating the public opinion risks of ORL's SPD and master planning processes, it will, 1, comply with Regulation 12 of the Local Planning Regulations 2012 to carry out public participation on the preparation and recommendations of the SPD before it is adopted and used to inform master planning. 2, follow the NPPF's SPD requirements for planning officers to provide further guidance for development on specific sites, and then in this particular case, para 23, provide a clear strategy and address objectively assessed needs for the proposed facilities in accordance with policy BISH 83A. During the pre-application engagement process, comply with the district plan policy DES 1-2 that the master plan will be collaboratively prepared with all stakeholders, including the public. And 4, include transport, environment, conservation area, and social impact assessments in the SPD's scope. Finally, will the council's chief legal officer recommend that all DMC members and their substitutes be excluded from today's meeting so they can take an unbiased decision when the resulting planning application comes before them for determination? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Dean. And Ruth Bravo. Ms. Bravo. Is Ruth Bravo here?
I don't think so, but Mr. Baker now is, if you want to take his or carry on.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here now if I can ask my question.
Oh yeah, Mr. Baker, please do. You were the first one coming up. Yes.
So good afternoon, councillors. My question's fairly similar to Paddy's. I want to ask if the various companies and individuals that represent the arts in Bishop Stortford are saying that the spaces you are creating in the new cinema art space are too small for us to use, and therefore, as experienced art professionals, we don't believe it would be viable to use them. How does that change your mind on the design or indeed the concept of your proposal?
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Baker. If Ruth Bravo isn't here. Daniel Badcock, I think you're here. Yes, I can see you.
Hello. Yep. So this is a rare opportunity to provide a substantial facility.
Sorry, Mr. Badcock, you were cutting out. Do you want to try again?
Yeah. Is that any better?
Yes, that sounds better.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is on the substantially reduced arts centre plan. Is there any option to delay the start of building the new arts facility? For example, to save the planned subsidy for some time to allow a scheme close.
I think we've frozen again. So if it's all right, Mr. Badcock, if I can just read out what your question is, so everybody's clear on it. It's on the substantially reduced arts centre plan. Is there any option delay to the start of the building of the new arts facility and to save the planned subsidy for some time to allow a scheme closer to the original proposal to be built? In my opinion, he says, to build a new facility without adding a larger stage to the town facilities is a huge missed opportunity, and additional cinema screens are not an exciting alternative proposition. Is that right?
Perfectly read.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Badcock. I mean, that's the trouble with doing virtual stuff. Often, you know, you do end up with various technical problems. The next question is Simon Anderson. Is Mr. Anderson here?
Yes, thank you, councillors. My question is very, very simple and follows on from the last one, really. Please tell me what the reasons are that we cannot postpone this decision, given the extraordinary level of public interest and the extraordinary economic situation that we're in, and the fact that this will commit us to something for a generation.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Just want to check if Ruth Bravo is here. If not, okay. Well, the following people are not here this afternoon. Their questions.
I am.
Oh, who is?
Jill Jones.
Oh, Jill Jones. Yes, you originally weren't going to be, but you are now. That's great. Thank you, Jill. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the time. Within the context of transparency and reflecting what some of the other speakers have said, I'd like to ask that councillors the question: the business plan doesn't show any financial comparisons between the proposed cinema and any other alternatives. Will you be providing any comparisons to show the residents of Bishop Stortford and the users how the cinema proposal outweighs other concepts in terms of cost, benefit and social impact? In particular, comparison, for example, with an educational establishment such as a digital skills training centre that might have performance space in it, in terms of potential economic boost and long-term sustainable income, as education is counter-cyclical and business took place between Cambridge and London to be such an educational hub. We don't see any of the information about what else is being considered. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jill Jones. And because the other people have not been able to be here this afternoon, but their questions will be answered as well. They're in the pack, the supplementary agenda, number 1, pages 55 to 60. And these are questions from Bethan Jones, Carl Warnell, Annette Burns, John Jones, Rosalind Rowe, and Michael Boynton. So we are now going to get some answers to these questions. And we're going to go to, first of all, the leader of the council, Linda Hazy.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for submitting your questions. We do appreciate it, and hopefully we will be able to provide you with some answers over the coming minutes. But first of all, I just want to say that some of the questions that have been submitted are very specific in terms of the information that they have asked, which we are not able to share at the moment. We are at a very early stage in the design, and this is further, and there is a lot of further work to be done in design development. As there is some overlap in the questions that have been asked, councillors will deliver a combined response to provide all of the information that we are able to give at this time. Councillor Jeff Williamson the lead on finance and resources, will give the first answer. But if I can pass back to you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hazy. Councillor Williamson, who's Deputy Lead and Executive Member for Finance, would you like to start the answers to those questions?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Chairman, and thank you to several questioners. Well, significant consultation took place around the designing of the original scheme, and it is with disappointment that the scheme has had to be reduced in response to the extraordinary circumstances that we have all found ourselves in as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite the subsequent impact this has had on public finances, alongside the impact of national government policy changes in relation to public sector borrowing, we have worked hard to keep as much of that original concept as possible, and the reduced scheme still adheres to our vision based on that early consultation process. There will be plenty of further opportunity for the public and the local creative community to engage with the revised proposals as we undertake more extensive consultation as part of the forthcoming planning process. The business plan is currently predicated on a limited live performance programme of a single performance per week in the 80-seat space, and income and hire assumptions are based on local benchmarking interpreted by expert business planners in the arts and culture industry. The inclusion of other live performances in shared spaces or outdoor space has not been factored in as required income within the business plan, but is of course something that we are looking to maximise within the delivery programme. Delay of the proposals has been considered, but taking into account inflation, costs associated with maintaining the existing design and developer teams, and other associated expenses, it is estimated that a 12-month delay would come at a minimum cost of 1.2 million. This would of course only make the scheme harder to deliver later down the line, and whilst we all hope that the economy will eventually recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, there is much less reassurance about the future of local government finances. Longer periods of delay would pose a significant risk of having to re-procure a development team at a later date, which would again add further risk and cost to the project. It's not possible to leave an area for the auditorium to be added at a later date. This space has been reallocated as part of the development of the overall scheme, which now includes the 90 senior living apartments, which have contributed to the increase in capital receipt by £700,000. In response to the specific question on Northgate End, it is not possible to redesign the multi-storey car park as the construction works are already well underway. To confirm, the council hasn't yet entered into a legally binding contract with the developer City Heart. The developer agreement for the wider Old River Lane scheme and the development management agreement for the Arts Centre are not yet agreed, but once these have been completed, details will be published in accordance with the Local Government Transparency Code. Thank you. Back to you, please, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. There was a question to do with planning, which Mr. Dean asked earlier, and perhaps I can ask the Executive Member for Planning, Councillor Jan Goodeve, to comment on that.
Thank you, Chairman. Taking the first 3 points together, the Council has prepared a number of supplementary planning documents which are compliant with the relevant regulations, and we will continue to ensure compliance with regulations, policy and guidance during the production of the SPD for Old River Lane. As set out in Policy BISH 8, the Bishop Stortford Town Centre Planning Framework will form the basis of the SPD, which will inform the master planning of the site. The preparation of the site-specific SPD will include early stakeholder engagement and follow a similar process to that of the Council's agreed master planning process, as well as meeting the statutory requirements for preparing SPDs. The master planning process contained in Policy DES 1 not only allows the Council to involve key stakeholders earlier in the planning process, but in this case allows the Council to expand the level of public participation prior to and during the production of the SPD. On point 4, generally speaking, an SPD is often constrained by the relevant policies with which it must comply. In this case, however, the master planning approach allows us to broaden the scope to discuss and examine these wider points. Finally, to address the request that Development Management Committee members be excluded from the meeting. Members of DMC are, by definition, members of the Council and have a right to attend and vote on all matters before the Council, so long as they do not have an interest in that matter. Being a member of DMC is not an interest in this context, and so DMC members need not be excluded from the Council meeting this afternoon. In any event, the consideration of a business plan is not akin to determining a planning application. The two are separate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Goodeve. And can I ask Councillor Eric Buckmaster, the Executive Member for Wellbeing, to answer some of the other queries that have come up this afternoon.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the questioners. The new facilities will still provide something new for the town. Yes, there will be a cinema, a high-end boutique offer which differs from the current local cinema provisions by providing a different experience with the potential to enjoy a film in luxurious surroundings while enjoying food and drink. But there'll also be a number of spaces where a live programme can be delivered. These spaces include gallery and foyer space for live music, a flexible cinema space in the 80-seat auditorium for a range of spoken word events, such as one-man, one-woman shows, author meet and greets, director cast talks, and small community-led events, as well as live streaming and other digital and immersive experiences. The outdoor space will provide the opportunity for larger performances, be it music, comedy, theatre, or live screening of theatre or sports events. We'll also explore the demand for and possibility of using, I beg your pardon, this is one of the drawbacks of being on a live stream in one's home, but that will stop in a moment. I'll wait for a minute.
Oh, it's yours. I thought it was somebody else's. All right, okay.
No, it's mine.
Right.
Okay, apologies. I'll go back to where I was. We'll also explore the demand for and the possibility of using the 150-seat cinema space as flexible performance space as part of the ongoing design development. We have worked closely with other local venues and understand that there's an existing demand for audiences of 80 to 100 people. As we move ahead with the design work, we'll continue to engage with the local community to better understand and respond to the local demand at this level. The design of all of these spaces is at a very early stage and will be developed alongside our expert team and with much public and statutory consultation. And I would like to provide reassurance that the public safety and sustainability will be built into all elements of the design process for the entire scheme. The Arts Centre is aiming to achieve BREEAM Excellent accreditation, and further information will be available as the design development progresses. Questions have been raised about the potential uses of the space. The scheme has not considered alternative options, such as the Further Education or Digital Skills College. The business case is based on proposals that are as close to the original brief for the site as possible, taking into account the financial constraints and need for commercial viability. Questions have also been raised in relation to the United Reformed Church Hall, which the council now owns. The site has always been earmarked for demolition to enable the delivery of the scheme as a whole. The current plans for the Arts Centre do not include community space for hire, but the council is currently considering options for the provision of additional community space for hire elsewhere in Bishop Stortford. Thank you, Chairman, and my apologies for the interruption.
It's fine. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Buckmaster. Well, thank you very much to the questioners for coming along this afternoon. Can I urge you, if you want to carry on and actually listen to the debate, that you then leave the Zoom application and then go onto the East Herts District YouTube channels. You go into YouTube, you look up East Herts District. It's important to put that word district in, and then you can watch the rest of the afternoon, what is discussed and indeed what comes out of that anyway. We now go to members' questions, which is item number 7. And I'm going to ask Councillor Myoni Goldspeak to speak. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My question is to the Leader of the Council, Councillor Linda Hazy. Would the Leader of the Council please clarify some points about the proposals for the Old River Lane development? Firstly, what are the plans for the United Reformed Church Hall, which is now owned by the Council? Secondly, has the size of the proposed arts centre been reduced from the original proposals? I meant in that to say, has the footprint been changed from the original proposals? And 3, what is the justification for adding a care home block of 90 units and beds? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goldspeak. Councillor Hazy.
Thank you, Councillor Goldspeak. I mean, hopefully, when the from the public questions, you will have received an answer to what is going to happen to the United Reformed Church Hall. It has always been due for demolition to provide an overall, to be part of the overall aspect of the design of the site. The second question you have asked me is the size of the Arts Centre. And I'm sure you will have noted in the main report in point, I think it's 4.7, let me just double check, yes, it's 4.7, where it does say that the size of the Arts Centre will be reduced. And the other one you asked me is about why are we adding a care home? Well, I would like to point out that we are not adding a care home to the site. The proposal is to provide a form of supported living for older people who are no longer able to live independently, but don't necessarily require 24-hour care in a residential care home. These facilities are being very welcomed by our County Council social care colleagues, as there is a great shortage in the district for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hazy. Councillor Goldspeak, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please, Chairman. Yes, I am confused about the size of the proposed arts centre, because yes, it does say in one point in our papers that it will be smaller, but on page 12 in 4.4, it does say that redesigning the arts centre space over a larger footprint will mean a wider, more cost-effective design. So which is right? I think it's on page, yes, on page 4.7, it says it will be smaller. On page 12 at 4.4, it says it will be a larger footprint. So which is the true position? Thank you.
If you remember back to January, Councillor Goldspeak, you will remember that one of the proposals put forward to us was an arts centre with accommodation and a residential on the side. Due to some extremely accurate and deft discussions with our consultants, we have been able to reduce and take away the residential aspect of that site, because we do not need the income from it. We can make the site work without those additional 31 residences. So that's where the larger number comes from, but the arts centre itself is reduced in size.
Right, thank you very much indeed, Councillors Hazy and Goldspeak. And we go on now to item 8, and that's the Old River Lane business plan, and invite Councillor Jeff Williamson, the Executive Member for Finance, to present this report.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Well, it's now almost 5.5 years since we purchased the Old River Lane site in October 2015. We saw it then as a great opportunity to regenerate this quarter of Bishop Stortford and shape it as we would want to see it, providing fantastic new amenities for the town. Step by step through the course of the intervening years, we formed and refined our ambition and vision for the site to be, and I quote, a complete regeneration of the old River Lane area to drive footfall into the area and revitalise the local economy by creating a welcoming destination for residents and visitors to Bishop Stortford. This to be achieved through a mixed development of residential, commercial and retail space, and as its centrepiece, a brand new arts centre to rival the best modern provincial arts complexes of its type across the country. Our plans for the scheme gradually progressed and have been presented to Council at various key stages over the last 3 to 4 years. However, members will recall that at our meeting in January, we looked at several factors which have emerged over the last 12 months that have regrettably impacted on our plans, which I touched on earlier in response to the public questions. One of these was the change in the financing of the main sites comprising the residential and commercial units. 12 months earlier, in January 2020, we had agreed the unit buyback financial model, which would have seen us retain full ownership of all these premises, making us the landlord and thus providing us with rental income. However, the announcement last November that we could not obtain Public Works Lending Board funding for projects deemed essentially for yield has made this opportunity unavailable to us. We therefore recognise that the only option remaining was a sale of the leasehold of the main site to City Heart for a capital receipt, which is back to the original proposition from the earlier days of the project. But this outcome does have the merit of reducing, as opposed to heavily increasing, the Council's overall borrowing requirements. In January, we also approved the revised scope of the Arts Centre, namely the removal of the auditorium from the scheme, as work undertaken last year demonstrated that due to increases in costs, coupled with our reduced ability to provide the level of subsidy required, no longer made this financially viable, and the burden on our future finances would be unaffordable. But we believed then, and we still believe now, that even without the auditorium, we would still be providing in the Arts Centre an excellent facility and draw for this quarter of Bishop Stortford, and still in line with our original vision. Since that January meeting, further work has been undertaken both to maximise the performance space and other facilities within the Arts Centre and to refine the cost modelling. The scheme as presented in January included some residential and commercial developments adjacent to the Arts Centre, the sale of which was intended to help support the Arts Centre's capital costs. However, it was found that by removing those elements, thereby allowing the Arts Centre a larger footprint, will save us a significant sum on the build costs, as it's always cheaper to build out rather than up. As a result, the capital requirements have fallen from 23.5 million to 15.5 million, with the return on investment increasing from 4.1 million to 6.9 million, and the subsidy required in the early years reducing from 1.1 million to just under 700,000. This redesign has also allowed us to include much needed extra care housing within the scheme, which will also add to our capital receipt by a further £700,000, as I mentioned earlier. The decisions we made in January 2020 and in January 2021 were subject to final agreement of the business case for the whole development. So that is now the task in front of us this afternoon. The details of the final business case are contained in the appendices 2 to 4, which, Chairman, of course, are exempt due to them containing financially sensitive information. But it is important to stress that the business case does demonstrate that the project is financially sustainable and deliverable. Chairman, before I move on to the recommendations, if I may, as there has been quite a lot of comment around further consultation with stakeholders and residents, I would ask that we alter recommendation 1 to include the words at the end of the current wording, and that through the detailed design and planning stages, public engagement and statutory consultation will be undertaken. Hopefully that will provide more reassurance on that matter. Therefore, Chairman, I'm pleased to move the recommendations 1 as altered and 2 on page 7 of the report approval of which will allow us to forge ahead with this exciting project to deliver the much needed and long awaited regeneration of this quarter of Bishop Stortford. Thank you, Chairman. I will pause at this point.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williamson. Can I just clarify then, you're altering recommendation 1, which says council approved that officers proceed with the delivery of the Old River Lane Arts Centre development and the Old River Lane main scheme development as set out in this report and on the basis of the financial viability demonstrated in the business case, which was already there, and then you're adding, and that through the detailed design and planning stages, public engagement and statutory consultation will be undertaken. Is that right?
That's correct, Chairman.
Thank you very much, and recommendation 2 as it stands. Councillor Buckmaster.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd like to second the altered recommendation and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Buckmaster. And if there's any comments or questions, do raise your hand, whether it be yellow or blue on Zoom. And we'll go to Councillor Myoni Goldsmith. You're muted, Councillor.
Yeah, sorry, yes, sorry, yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Well, I'm interested to hear that the proposed amendment from Councillor Williamson, it goes a little way to meet the amendment which I would like to propose, but I think it is not quite strong enough. So I would still like to propose an amendment to this first recommendation. And
can you tell us what your amendment is, please?
Yes, my amendment is also to add words at the end of what is printed on our papers. So that would follow on from the business case. I would like to remove that full stop after case and put in a comma, and then the amendment would continue. The extra words are as follows: but only on condition that the final layout, sizes and functions of the internal spaces within the Arts Centre will not be decided until full consultation has been held with the local interest groups and the residents of Bishop Stortford. This consultation would help to determine the potential usage and financial viability of the centre. So the difference between this amendment and what has already been proposed is that we would really like the consultation and dialogue between the arts people and other interest groups to take place before anything is decided. And that is why it says that the decision should not be taken until full consultation had taken part. So it is the timing which is really important. So I would like to propose my amendment as I have just said. Thank you. I do have a seconder, and once the seconder has been accepted, I would like to speak further on the amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Just to clarify then, this amendment adds after the words business case that's already in recommendation 1 on page 7, and adds, but only on condition that the final layout, sizes and function of the internal spaces within the Arts Centre will not be decided until full consultation has been held with local interest groups and with the residents of Bishop Stortford. This consultation will help to determine the potential usage and viability of the centre. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to second that proposed amendment. Thank you, and reserve my right to speak later on.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So comments or questions on the amendment that has been proposed? Oh, sorry, Councillor Goldsmith. Yes, you want
Yes, please. I would like to speak about it.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to begin by thanking everyone who has been involved with the Old River Lane project. I'd like to thank them for all their hard work. I acknowledge that everyone concerned has been motivated by a genuine wish to provide something really good and beneficial for the people of Bishop Stortford. And as has been demonstrated by the large number of very detailed questions from members of the public today, it is obvious that the residents of Bishop Stortford are keenly interested in the whole project, and they're very willing to share all their ideas and to make contributions. However, what has also become clear is the fact that many of these contributors feel that they have been kept a bit in the dark over the years, kept in the dark and ignorant about all the plans and the reasonings which were behind the plans. They feel that there has been a lack of communication and a lack of dialogue, and that's a great pity. I do note in our papers on page 15 under 5.0, next steps, there is a mention of consultation and communication with residents, stakeholders and delivery partners, and engagement on design of the Arts Centre, and I welcome this statement very much. However, it does not give any time for these consultations, but it does finish by stating the consultations in line with the briefs which have already been agreed, and that worries me. So what is being suggested here is that the council will work up the design briefs and it then consult afterwards. Now that, I think, is a serious mistake, and I do think it's important that the consultation and communication should take place before the design proposals are decided. So this is why I'm sticking with my original recommendation, and I would really commend it to the council, and I ask for you to support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Goldspink. Are there any comments or questions on the amendment from Councillor Goldspink? Councillor Buckmaster.
Thank you, Chairman. May I just ask a question of process? I don't want to lose my ability to speak on the original motion as altered. Am I allowed to just speak on this amendment as well?
You can speak on this amendment, yes, and you can speak on the other.
Right, okay. Just very briefly, one of the reasons I'm not happy with this amendment is because it refers to the residents of Bishop Stortford. And of course, any facilities that we have are residents of the district, and that applies to Hertford Theatre, and it will apply to the Arts Centre, which is located in Bishop Stortford. But I think the way we're proposing it with the altered amendment actually is a much wider engagement. It shouldn't be limited to the people of Bishop Stortford, because the draw is much more than that. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Buckmaster. Any other comments and questions on the amendment? If not, we'll go to Councillor Chris Wilson, who's seconder. Oh, well, actually, before I come to you, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Carolyn Redfern.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think the amendment suggests that it's limited to people in Bishop Stortford. It does suggest that arts organisations, you know, not just in Bishop Stortford. So I don't think the amendment is limiting at all. That's the way I see it anyway. Thank you.
It does include the words full consultation being held with local interest groups and with the residents of Bishop Stortford.
Right, residents, but local can also mean in Hertford as well.
Okay, I take your point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson, as a second.
Thank you, Chair. I think firstly, just to address that point, I don't think if there was such a consultation, we would be taking people's postcodes and saying you can't come and consult if you're from Sawbridgeworth or wherever else it would be in the district. But I do take Councillor Buckmaster's point that we'd have to be open to all people who would be likely to use that facility. So I'm predicating this statement, I guess, on the basis that in general, we're not really going to be looking, if the original plans are approved, we're not generally going to be looking at changing a great deal about the size of the proposed performance spaces. And then the consultation will then be proposed to be carried out after that point. So that's sort of something that will be maybe slightly changeable in my mind were this original proposal to be agreed to, but not very much, not considerably so. And I think that's a sticking point for quite a lot of the local arts groups. So if you will indulge me a little bit, I wanted to briefly go over the history of the development. The original consultation was not, in my view, adequate, going back to 2016. The reason I know this is because of the amount of times residents have said to me they weren't aware there was a consultation. I'm aware that officers and councillors at the time tried their best to consult, but if you get a feedback that people didn't hear about it, then I'm afraid I don't think it was adequate. Having said this, the council then approved what was a plan including a 500-seat theatre, which was admittedly now not able to proceed, and I accept that. At the time, it was a rather pricey and risky indulgence, I think, given also that there were 3 other capital projects being indulged in at the same time. Since that has happened, I do understand the misfortune of the loss of funding opportunity due to the national government's unfair decision and the fact we are beholden to the LEP, of course, to get something built quickly. And also, of course, as Councillor Williamson said, COVID. This is why we're not calling for a pause or a radical change in the plans before us today. It's not practical or possible, even it is desirable. But there are 4 things I would bring up. Firstly, the Old River Lane has to attract business and people to the town centre so it can regenerate and stay relevant and alive. The town is overwhelmingly saying that it won't. I think we've all heard that. I think we heard that today, and we've heard that if we're engaged with the public and if we hear social media. Secondly, it needs to make enough money so the council is not saddled with debt. The theatre has been said is too big a risk because it's expensive and will not make enough money quickly enough. That's the judgment we've been given. So, okay, we do need a cheaper offer. But if it's something that is so unattractive to the people of the town, they won't go to it. So that again would be a false economy. Thirdly, it is said that the new Old River Lane will reflect the celebrated townscape of Bishop Stortford. But looking at the car park and the height of the proposed blocks of flats, I fear that isn't the case. Fourthly, this is a reduction in facility for the arts. We are losing the URC as hall, as has been confirmed today, under the present plans, and are not replacing it with a performance space for similar size. Indeed, not only the people of the town, but also all local arts groups, as we have heard today, are saying loud and clear this is not going to serve their needs. If we are truly consulting and listening, we need to do that now. If the plans before you are approved without amendment, we have not listened. It's been a fantastic illustration of local democracy today with such brilliant public participation. If we have listened, we change this now. There is no point consulting after the fact. It would be like asking an 11-a-side football team how they would like a golf course designed to suit their purposes. So for those reasons, I wholeheartedly support this amendment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. So the amendment then is to recommendation 1 on page 7, and adding the words after the words business case, but only on condition that the final layout, sizes and function of the internal spaces within the Arts Centre will not be decided until full consultation has been held with local interest groups and with the residents of Bishop Stortford. This consultation would help to determine the potential usage and viability of the centre. If you could vote, please, by using your raised hand or your blue hand for those of you who are in favour of the Liberal Democrat amendment.
I see 6 hands at the moment, I think. 7 perhaps. 6, Chairman.
All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can see 7.
7, yes, 7 hands.
Thank you very much.
So I'll just lower those if you bear with me a second.
Yep.
Okay.
And those of you who are against that particular amendment, if you could vote now.
More than 7.
Right. There are some people still using the red cross and the green tick, but if you could not use that, please, because it doesn't stay on the screen very long anymore, you have to use the yellow or blue hand.
Yeah, it's clearly lost.
Right, okay, thank you very much indeed. So that amendment.
I'll just lower those, bear with me.
Yes.
Okay.
For point of order, Mr. Chairman, are there any abstentions?
No, I'm just about to ask that.
Sorry, thank you.
Yes, any abstentions?
Don't think so.
No.
No.
All right, thank you very much. So we now go back to the original proposal, which is recommendation 1 and 2. We'll get some comments and questions on that if you'd like to speak on that. And that follows the wording of after business case, and that through the detailed design and planning stages, public engagement and statutory consultation will be undertaken. Any comments or questions regarding this? If so, please raise your hand. Councillor Ben Crystal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask for a little bit more detail on what that statutory consultation will involve.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Chris Wilson.
Thank you again, Chair. Sorry to hog the meeting. I just wanted to ask, partly the first thing I said really, how much room, if there was a consultation, would there be to change the size of the performance space were the public and the arts groups to say, oh, we really need, say, a 300 seat or a 200 seat or 250 seat? Is that in the scope of the consultation? So similar to Councillor Crystal's question, really.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Redfern.
Yes, I'm sorry to return to money again, but after all, we are looking at this again for the third time because of lack of money. And I've really looked at the business plan, and in the public business plan, I'd like to know, based on section 4.4 of the public business plan, what change in business, for example, ticket prices or new initiatives over the year, justify a subsidy of £603,000 in the first 7 years being turned around into a profit of 6.9 million over 30 years. I understand that inflation will affect the numbers, but this would surely affect income and expenditure in a proportionate way. I'm wondering how these numbers have been arrived at. Are different inflation rates being used for expenditure and income? And I have another question as well. Having read the confidential papers very carefully, I don't believe there is much information which is commercially sensitive within them. We're spending public money, so the public should know how this is being spent. For instance, what can possibly justify the proposed ticket sales and prices being regarded as confidential? Surely they don't need to be kept. I think instead of just releasing as much as we can, we're releasing as little as we can. And I really object to that.
Thank you very much for your question. Can I just mention that if we do make specific references to appendices 2, 3 and 4, we then have to exclude the public because of the commercial confidentiality of that. I'm not saying that yours was a case in question, but if any other councillors do want to raise anything from that, please bear that in mind, because we then have to end the YouTube broadcast and then come back to the public when we take the vote. Right, Councillor Goldspink.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I ask a question relating to the United Reformed Church Hall, which is now, it is proposed to demolish? Did I hear correctly in one of the answers which was given that in the new iconic art centre, there will be no space which community groups could hire? At the moment, the URC Church Hall is used very greatly by lots of community groups for all sorts of activities, as well as for the performance arts. So if that is demolished, that is a real loss of community space and community provision. So did I hear correctly that there will be no possibility of ordinary groups, toddler groups, dramatic arts or any sort of community group? Will there be no space in the Arts Centre for them to hire and to use for community purposes? Is that true?
Thank you very much, Councillor Goldspink. Councillor David Snowden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to follow up on something that Councillor Goldspink said. Like many people in this chamber, I was bitterly disappointed we are not pushing ahead with the plans for the theatre-led project in Old River Lane. I was really excited by the scheme and proud of the hard work the leader and council's senior officers had put into this vision. However, as it became apparent that the coronavirus pandemic and changes to the Public Works Loan Board rules meant that the theatre project was no longer viable, I spent a lot of time with Councillor Hazy as leader of the council, Councillor John Wiley as leader of Bishop Stortford Town Council, and my colleagues in the Conservative Appeal at East Herts and officers to see, as a ward member, what could be done. We looked at the very many alternative funding options and ways to make the scheme work. Fortunately, none of them quite met the financial benchmarks required. That was a great shame. At this point, it is probably worth remembering across the board that all the members here today really want the best for our towns and villages. In the case of Bishop Stortford, that really does mean redeveloping this strategic site at this point. We've heard a lot of plans today for some far-fetched investment plans, trying to take it all back to the drawing board and to increase, which would just increase the costs and developments. So I'd really say, you know, we just need to push on with this at this point, and really just to stress that we need to get this done, and done quickly for the best of our town and our district. And just really just to ask Councillor Hazy as well, I know you've put a lot of work into this. This is the best scheme that we can get, the best for Stortford. Would you agree with that, Councillor Hazy?
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor David Snowden. Councillor Graham McAndrew.
Right, thank you, Chairman. On the same vein as Councillor Snowden, firstly, can I say I'm sympathetic to the concerns raised this evening by the members of the public and fully understand the great sense of disappointment with the paper in front of Council this evening. Circumstances which you have heard in response to the public question have taken us to this juncture. I have received many emails on this subject and too am unhappy with the outcome, like many of my fellow councillors, whom like me shared greater aspirations. Councillor Jeff Williamson in his response said, "It is with disappointment that this scheme has had to be reduced in response to the extraordinary circumstances that we have all found ourselves in." I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Williamson. Councillor Eric Buckmaster talked about the new facilities will still provide something new for the town. Yes, there will be a cinema, a high-end boutique offer, and much more. Councillor Buckmaster went on to talk about the design of all these spaces is at a very early stage and will be developed alongside our expert team with much public and statutory consultation. I, like others, look forward to the consultation and put in as a recommendation as advised by Councillor Williamson. Councillor John Goodeve touched on the master planning, SPDs and various other planning matters. And Chairman, if I may, I would also like to contribute in moving forward with the proposal in front of us this evening on sustainability for the new build. Now, this can't be done until we have agreed the scope of the proposals. Once they have been agreed, the exact sustainability BREEAM specifications can then be modelled in. The key messages from me now are that we will be aiming for BREEAM Excellent accreditation for the Arts Centre, and that, in addition to this, we will be seeking maximum carbon efficiency and looking to achieve carbon neutrality if possible. In addition to BREEAM, sustainability will be built into all aspects of the design and delivery, including, for example, EV charging points in all car parks, consideration of solar panels, and sustainability requirements as a key element of the contractor selection. Chairman, we are at the point now that we've got to sort of go ahead with what we've got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McAndrew. Councillor Sophie Bell.
First of all, I would like to say I'm very pleased with the discussion around the environmental sustainability of the building. I would like to thank everybody that's been involved in ensuring that this new build actually fits environmental standards and will be a beacon of sustainability in Bishop Stortford. However, I would like to express disappointment in the situation we find ourselves in now. I'm not involved with Bishop Stortford Amateur Dramatics, but have been involved with my own local amateur dramatics groups in the past. And I think if I was in this situation where originally we'd been promised a 500-seat brand spanking new theatre and then had that sort of taken away from us, it would be quite disappointing. But made even more disappointing by the fact that a space that is currently being utilised by amateur groups for performing theatre is being taken away. East Herts isn't just the fact that the original proposal was providing greater space for amateur dramatic groups, and now the council have decided they're actually going to take away existing spaces, I think is quite damaging for amateur groups locally. I do think it would be, I think the proposals that the council have to replace that with a cinema screen that can be used for performances but only has an 80-seat capacity, I think falls woefully short of what these amateur groups need. And I would implore the council to look deeper into alternative proposals, such as replacing the in the car park that's proposed for the site of URC, whether it's possible to build that on a 2-storey car park and have a studio theatre with 200 to 250 seat capacity beneath it, or whether it's possible to actually reduce the cinema offerings to 3 screens and have a keep the studio theatre in there. I mean, from what I understand anyway, the point of this development is to make the council money, and URC itself makes, I believe, about £80,000 a year profit. So it seems quite silly to take that away and not replace it with something similar, especially when we don't really know the impact that COVID's going to have on cinema uptake in the future anyway. That's just my feeling. I think it's a real shame for amateur groups in Bishop Stortford and the surrounding area to have what seemed like a fairly good offer in the URC taken away and not have it replaced with something similar or better. I think we have an opportunity to actually replace URC with something that's better than they currently have, but we're not doing that. We're just taking the existing offering away and leaving them to it, which I think is a real shame for the creative groups in our district.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bell. Councillor Linda Hazy.
Thank you, Chairman. I know a number of councillors have asked questions. I think they have effectively been answered over the debate and by Councillor Williamson and Councillor Buckmaster in their introductions and answering the questions from members of the public. My just single word to Councillor Snowden is yes.
Right. Okay, thank you very much indeed. I'll call upon the seconder and proposer in just a second. If one or could address some of the issues that have been raised, including what is meant by statutory consultation and what flexibility there might be on the performance space, and whether there's any comment on the financial issues that were raised earlier on. Councillor Buckmaster as the seconder, if I can call upon you.
Taking note of some of the additional comments made. Yeah, I'd like to respond to some of the points raised and summarising by saying that the opportunity for our cultural centre in Old River Lane is absolutely nothing like anything currently on offer in the area, and it can't be referred to in the same terms as a multiplex as it has been. That is not what it is. It will be an entirely different experience. The Old River Lane Arts Centre will be a draw for the community and the wider community, as I mentioned earlier, with multiple spaces for both first release and niche cinema experiences in pleasant surroundings, space for some live performance and good food and beverage, and that will be also part of the consultation. There'll be opportunities for up and coming performers to showcase their talents in an audience space appropriate to their needs. Unlike the nationals that ultimately are accountable to their shareholders, our aim is to create an ethos based on community need, with programming that will provide different experiences day and evening to ensure we have as wide a reach as possible for accessibility and special needs, based on a great deal of experience we have already acquired through Hertford Theatre. And while not a hall space, community groups will certainly be users of the performance and cinema spaces. The business case for Old Rail Lane and the Arts Centre outlines a way forward that's both achievable and sustainable. I don't believe people want to stay at home and just watch stream services, again, as has been suggested in the past. That will increase, but it's not the same as a night out with a meal or a drink in a local bar or cafe. Both will coexist, and streaming will also form part of the offer to the Arts Centre, and that could be from Hertford Theatre, South Mill Arts, or elsewhere. The technology that serves home entertainment will also offer greater opportunities for sharing experiences and increasing audiences. When we started on this journey, as we've heard this afternoon, our ambition was for a larger auditorium. Things changed, and I can tell you we resisted pulling back from that ambition. We looked at every possibility and then we looked again. However, we are still doing the very best we're able to do. And this is something that remains of great value to the residents of Bishop Stortford and the wider area, and that will draw people in to enhance the local economy. The design stage could include exhibitions for the Arts Centre, online and physical if permitted. Master planning for the whole site will take place as part of the planning process, in addition to the statutory consultation. We'll be looking at the demand for the use of the performance space to see if the higher capacity is preferred or otherwise. There is no merit in delay. There is no magic wand that will change the situation in a year or two. We've heard that the risks in not proceeding are actually far greater than the opportunity that exists in proceeding with confidence in creating something of great value for current and future residents. And I absolutely support the recommendations as in the paper and altered as we agreed earlier. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Buckmaster. And as the proposer, Councillor Williamson, would you like to round up?
Thank you, Chairman. There were a couple of points raised which I will try to respond to. Councillor Crystal asked about the statutory consultation. That will be entirely in line with what we would do with any master planning process, as we would with any of our other projects or key schemes across the district. But as part of that entire consultation process, as I mentioned in one of the answers to the questions earlier on, we are looking to engage with the local residents, with the local creative community, through as an extensive consultation plan as we can. Councillor Wilson asked about sort of room to manoeuvre in effect in terms of the internal design. Well, as a result of the consultation, working with groups, we will work with the architects to create the best facilities within the centre as we can, within whatever restraints we have within our cost model and so forth. But whatever we can do, we will do. Councillor Redfern asked about the finances. I can only refer Councillor Redfern to Appendix 3, where that is explained in detail how these figures are derived. But if we need to go into discussion on that, then we'll need to go into Part 2. But hopefully Councillor Redfern can find the answers in Appendix 3. And the reason that the appendices are confidential, they do contain commercially sensitive information which could affect our procurements. We still have contracts and contractors to appoint, and the details in these appendices would prejudice that process. And Councillor Goldspink did ask about the community space within the hall. It is my understanding that we're not allowing for any community space for hire within the Arts Centre, but we are working with other groups and providers across the town to see what alternative provision can be made. Hopefully that covers everything, Chairman. So to round up, if we can agree recommendations this afternoon as amended, This will be our final endorsement of the whole scheme, allowing us to move ahead with the master planning process across this coming spring. The project team would work in close collaboration with City Heart and the architects Glenn Howells through the design stages and the promised further consultations with residents, partners and the other stakeholders we can actually get on with. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williamson. Can we now then vote if you're in favour of recommendation 1 and 2? Recommendation 1, adding the words "and that through the detailed design and planning stages, public engagement and statutory consultation will be undertaken." If you're in favour, if you're voting for, please click raise hand or the blue hand. Looks like 27.
Need to lower those hands now, Chairman?
Yeah, that's 28 actually.
Yeah, I'm lowering them now.
And now those of you who are against the proposal on page 7 plus the additional sentence, those who are against, please vote now.
4.
Please make sure you're muted, please.
4, I think.
4. Okay, thank you.
I'll just clear those, 1 second.
Clear those. Thank you.
Okay.
And those of you who are abstaining, please vote now.
2. Yep.
Okay, thank you
clear
very
those
much.
down.
Well, thank you very much indeed for your discussion and indeed for members of the public who joined us this afternoon as well. That concludes our meeting. Some of us are back at 7 o'clock, I know, for another meeting. Otherwise, the next council meeting is on Wednesday, the 12th of May. But that concludes this afternoon's meeting at 5:27. Have a good afternoon. Might see some of you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chairman.